exciting.
That sounds good.
It does, right?
Croatia is a great market.
I know it is. And I think we got some good stuff coming. Great. Thanks everybody for joining us for this Fika. A Fika, just to give you a quick explainer, is the Swedish coffee time. And we socialize in that time. We talk a little bit about work. We talk a little about our lives. But it's very relaxing, and every Swede does it every single day. So
At least twice.
At least twice. So to that, welcome to our Fika. So we can just take a little casual conversation time, and I'm catching up with my friend and one of our leaders, Przemek Sienkiewicz, who is our Chief Strategy Officer here at Clavister. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here, and happy to be able to talk to you guys.
And Przemek is amazing because he's got such a wealth of experience. He's been at many companies, big companies, and I want to ask him firstly about that and also about strategy. So Przemek, in those companies, and I want you to tell me those companies, how did strategy iterate, and what does strategy mean to you in a tech company?
Right, so I before I joined Clavister, I spent about 24 years working for different companies, mostly US-based companies, but I ranged from working for very, very large companies all the way to very small startups when I was like employee number 100 something. I think the common denominator across those companies, and these were Lucent Technologies, Oracle, Google, IBM, regardless whether they were small and a couple of startups, regardless whether they were small or large, they had a strategy, but that's not the key element of success. It's execution.
I was going to say,
Yes.
I mean, which one gets the higher emphasis, execution or strategy, or is there some kind of ratio between the two?
And strategy to a certain extent is an aspirational thing. It's okay, we are here, we want to go there, and where it is really located, where do we want to go, right? And I think that's one thing that you need to have. But then looking into how you actually do it, and then obviously failing and waking up and standing up and making sure that you actually fulfill some steps that you designed. That is the important part. And going into the overall direction of the strategy. And what I think is a common denominator across those companies is that this process has been done every single year in terms of establishing the strategy, but then following up on it, and then revisiting, and then basically reinventing it every year all over again, and trying to adjust the path. And that's the journey as well that we set sail for 3 years ago with Clavister.
Yeah, and that's what my second question too. How does that strategy execution, how does that iterate over time? I mean, you were with Google, you were with IBM, not to name drop, but you've been with some big companies, and like you say, you've got those small companies. But what are the things you see when it comes to strategy iterating?
Mm-hmm. So the main difference between large companies and the smaller companies is that, just like in case of Clavister, the smaller companies, they have huge elasticity, right? And what that means is that, okay, you set the strategy, but then you can be very, very pragmatic about the opportunities that you take along the way. And in the bigger companies, it is so much more difficult because it has, they have certain inertia and they just move forward regardless what the opportunities are on the side of the road. And that results in a lot of lost opportunities, but it's a longer time process, right? Here, in the smaller companies, that flexibility, being agile and how you make your decisions and how you follow up on the strategy is making a huge difference. Because especially in our case, we really need to look out for a couple of items out there. Where's the market going? What is happening with our customers? How is our tech and offering and solution packages that we have? How do they stay relevant to everything that's around it, and mostly to our customers? And then when you go along, we are living in the environment around us is changing so fast that we have that flexibility to be really agile about it and really take the opportunities as they appear on the horizon. So that's the main difference, I would say.
That's interesting. And I mean, with Clavister, this is I think you're coming up on your third year now, right?
Yeah.
And so you came into a company, of course, we've always had strategy, however, probably never in the codified sense, in the same level of professionalism as what you brought, where you said, okay, let's look at all the objects on the table here, let's put this in the right way. What's been the evolution of Clavister strategy? What do you see? What was it 3 years ago? What is it now, and where do you think it's going to go?
Okay, so I think one big change that happened over the last 3 years is that we tried to look in terms of the strategy slightly further away, right? So before we were looking maybe 12, 18 months ahead. Now we're looking 5 years ahead. And then obviously it's a big task to follow up, but then we divide it into digestible chunks and we basically move along and try to execute on that, and that's the main role. But I think if you look at the Clavister 3 years ago and you look at where it is right now, the biggest shift is happening in the way Clavister is expressing the value that it brings to the market. 3 years ago we were one product company. And it was a very good run, but we needed to be more relevant, and to be more relevant was to really think about, okay, how do we offer a platform out of the technical building blocks that we have in the company? And then this was another step.
Or the ones you need.
Exactly.
Right.
And this was another step of evolution. So if you remember, about 2 years ago, we came up with the Aurora portfolio, which was basically a platform of different functionalities and products that were delivering completely different level of value to the customer. And we need to continue on the journey, and at the same time keep in mind that there is an ever evolving and changing world outside of us, and we need to make sure that we adjust our go-to-market and the way we position our value to the customers, to everything that happens outside and what the customers want.
Yeah. What do you think about some of these trends that are happening? I mean, as a strategist, I guess that's one of the main things you're taking a look at and saying, okay, this is the horse that I want to bet on. This is where we need to go. This is where our competitors aren't. This is where it's too saturated. What are some of the trends you're seeing that you think that's interesting?
So, in our business, it's no secret that for the last 10 years, the biggest trend ever is cloud, right? Everything is cloud or is becoming cloud, or, we remember back in 2008, 2009, the first things, this was business productivity tools like Exchange, Google appeared with Google Apps, and all those things, which were at that time commodities, started to move to the cloud. And you see those shifts happening over and over again, and you have at this stage we talking about the business critical applications that are moving to the cloud. And every time this shift happens, something else moves from in-house into the cloud. This shift happens faster and faster because we get accustomed to that fact that this is the way forward, and that's one of the trends, right? I'd say the other trend is that is specifically impacting our business in cybersecurity is remote working, right? And I think this was drastically accelerated or changed in space based on the COVID situation and everything that happened this year. So we see that this is even more of a trend right now and has impact on a lot of things. So that's another element. And I think the third one is, again, looking from the perspective of our company, is the fact that security becomes very, very complex, right? Complex to the point, and then again, I use the comparison with Exchange and Office 365 when this change happened. Before Exchange became a piece of the application that was supposed to be maintained in-house, and at the same time it was very complicated to run, and you had to have a lot of people. And similar situation happens with the security. The only difference is that the resources that can actually understand the security are scarce. So we have a situation where we have a lot of deployments done, but the utilization of the security features in the products that we deploy, utilization by the customers is not that high. So that's one thing, and moving to the cloud, looking at the way the shift happens, I believe that we are looking ahead in exactly the same scenario where security needs to become a commodity because it's too complex, and the only way it can be achieved if it happens in the cloud, because then first of all you lower the barrier to entrance. And then a lot of typical configuration and maintenance tasks are not on the end user actually, right? So that is something that you can already observe happening.
Would you say that future is as a service, or would you say it depends on the customer?
If you look at how we were consuming functionalities, applications 10, 15 years ago, none of it was as a service, maybe except Google search, right?
Yeah.
And a couple of others. But then as we move along, and partially the telecommunication world have helped with that, because the whole subscription-based model is something that we are very well accustomed to, and we know and we understand it. And a lot of the functionalities and applications are now being delivered in that way, regardless if they're delivered from the cloud or from somewhere else. It's still, from the business perspective, as a service model, so subscription-based. And I think, if you look at the, for example, price list of some of our competition, you really need to start to finish higher education to understand what it says. And that's not the way to move forward, and this is not going to scale, right? So that's part of the game we want to be in, to really massively simplify the business model for our customers, and effectively in result also for us.
And I guess that's been, iterating, I think, the evolution, what I've seen with Clavister strategy, going from a hardware company, effectively, to a mixed cloud hardware company. And, the future is cloud, as you say, and you know it better than anybody. It's been an interesting journey. And we're, especially with the MSSP program, that's been exactly as you say. Here it is, here as a service, commoditized, simplified, easy price list, far easier than our competitors.
Yes, and this is also very well aligned with technology trends that you see out there, because cloud is obviously to a certain extent a technology trend, but it's also a business trend that it's just cheaper to do things there, right, and more efficient. But then specifically from cybersecurity perspective, you look at and connectivity and remote working. You look at things or emerging things like new concept of, it's not new, but it's now getting traction, called zero trust networking, right? Where the identity of the user or the device is becoming a center of everything, right? It's not necessarily your location or things that put you behind the firewall, right? It's something different. Then you have a trend that is especially accelerated now with the remote working, which is moving away from expensive and not really efficient leased lines for the connectivity to the offices, small, big, regardless, into something that is much more modern, called SD-WAN. And this is basically connecting in a software-defined way using the internet connection, but still maintaining the quality of service you would expect from the enterprise connection. The only thing there is that the SD-WAN by definition is not necessarily secure, right?
It's not built in with security.
Yes, and if you put all those together, then we have a scenario which is now by Gartner called SASE, which is called Secure Access Service Edge, and this is where we believe we should be going as well.
Interesting. Last question. What's your favorite strategy story? Is it Tesla? Is it Apple? Who do you think has the most aspirational strategy that you've seen?
This may be, when I look at those companies, they all have great strategies, and it's amazing how they are executing against it, right? But something that I observed a couple of years ago was Lego.
Right.
And Lego was almost on the verge of bankruptcy. And they did
good time to buy one of the hottest stocks in the last 5 years.
And they couldn't reinvent themselves until they changed the management. And there was this guy that had an idea. Okay, why don't we ask our customers what they want? And they run this big campaign of actually getting feedback from the customers of what is the next big thing that they would like to see. And then actually they made it. So then you have all those little
Ninjago,
yes, exactly, all those movie characters happening, and they basically reinvented themselves. So what I think is important is, okay, to a certain extent, you can be a visionary and say, guys, this is what you need. But I would say to an even larger extent, you have to listen to what those guys are telling you. And that's
Great
where we want to go.
messages. We're listening to our partners. I think we got to get back to it, man.
All right, thank you.